Hello everyone, I'm Paul and today we're solving problem 1437. Check if all ones are at least length k places away. This is easy, so here I will show you what's my thought process and code. Our job here is in the title. Given a binary array nums and an integer k, we need to return true if all ones are at least k places away from each other, otherwise return false. So if we are given this array and k is 2, we can take these two ones, and here we have 3 zeros in between, and given that we need at least k places and k is 2 and 3 is greater than 2, we are good to go, we can continue. Now if we take these two ones, here we have 2 zeros in between, 2 is equal to k, so we are also good to go. Now if we take these two ones, here we have 3, 4, 5, 6 spaces in between. So we are also good to go. And given that every one of these numbers, 6, 3, and 2, are greater or equal to k, we return true. Now let's take a look at what's happening here. We don't even need to compare these two ones. Why? Well, because if we know that here we have 3 spaces and then here we have 2 spaces, well, of course that here we will have more spaces. So if here we are good to go and here we are good to go, of course that here we are good to go also. Now, what if k is 3, for example? Well, we don't need to compare these two neither. Why? Well, because here we have 3 spaces and then here we have 2 spaces, and this is already smaller than k, so at this point we can just return false. So the main observation here is that we don't need to compare ones that have other ones in between, okay? And now the question is, how can we solve this? Meaning, how can we get this and this amount of spaces efficiently? And ideally we should get this in big O of n time complexity. So we can iterate this from left to right from index 0. So the I pointer is initially here, and we will have a variable to keep track of previous indices with 1's. Okay, so first we are here, and given that we have a 1, we can replace this with the current index. This is index 0. Now we are here, and whenever we find a 0, we just continue. Here we have another 0. This is another 0. So now we are standing here. These are the indices. We are at index 4 and we have a 1. Whenever we have a 1, we need to update previous. So this is now 4. Now before doing this, we need to take the amount of spaces in between the previous index and the current index. And here we do the current index minus previous index minus 1. This is how we get the amount of zeros in between, 3, okay? So this is the main formula, I minus previous minus 1. And given that 3 is greater than k, we can continue and update this with 4. Now this is a 0, so we continue. This is another 0. And here we have a 1, so we do the same as before. The current index is 7 minus previous 4 minus 1, this is 3, 2. And 2 is equal to k, so this is good. We are good to go here. We can continue. What this means is in between these two numbers we have 2 zeros. Now we update previous with the current index. This is 7. We update I, and given that we reach the end of the array and never return false, we can just return true. Now if we were standing here and this was 3, here we have 2 spaces in between the current index and previous, meaning here we have these 2 spaces, and given that 2 is smaller than 3, at this point we can just return false. Okay, we end this loop and return false right away. And by doing this, we are solving this in only one pass, meaning big O of n time complexity. And space complexity here is big O of 1. So now let's go with the code. First, n is the length of nums, and previous is -1. Now for every index in range n, if the current number is a 1, we are checking if previous is different from -1, and I minus previous minus 1, meaning the amount of zeros in between the current index and the previous index with 1 is smaller than k, we can return false right away. And every time we update previous to the current index, finally, if we reach the end of this loop and never return false, return true. So this is the entire code. Now let's submit this. As you can see, this works and it's very efficient. So if you found this useful, please drop a like, subscribe, and see you in the next one. Bye bye.